You're listening to 91.5 WDBK-FM, Blackwood, Camden County College Radio.
This is madness!
Madness. Total madness.
This is either madness or brilliance.
Trying to make sense out of all the madness.
It is now time for Midday Madness.
But it's madness.
WDBK's Midday Show, where the madness is just beginning. And welcome to 91.5 WDBK for some Midday Madness. You already know, here on this Monday. Can't believe it. September 22nd already. As we've almost been in this college, this semester has almost been a month old already. Can't believe I'm saying it. It's absolutely crazy. But as promised, this is Midday Madness. Vincent Foast here behind the mic here for you and for this hour in general. Of course, make sure to text into the show with our brand new WDBK text line 856-345-9325. Once again, 856-345-9325. You can text into the show if you want to be a part of the conversation at hand. Of course, you already know we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to bring up, as you know where I'm going to go for, of course, for the huge event, the huge miracle, some may like to call it. Whatever we witnessed yesterday, it was a style of football. What style? I don't know. But hey, the main thing is a bird came out with a W. Of course, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles, the 3-0 start that they now have. Of course, yesterday, for the majority of that game, it didn't look like they were going to have a 3-0 start, but somehow, some way, the Eagles on both sides of the ball showed up when it mattered most. And that's what makes this team so fantastic, is their ability to show up when it matters most, and not just one specific guy. And it's something that I have said time and time again. And this is something where, with a win like yesterday specifically, I don't want to hear anyone saying Jalen Hurts is the reason that the Eagles got the win. I don't want to hear anyone saying Jordan Davis is the reason the Eagles got the win. Yes, they contributed big time. Of course, Jordan Davis got the game-winning field goal block that kept the Eagles in the lead. And, of course, they got that extra touchdown to get them to 33. But I don't want to hear anyone saying, especially in this game, Jordan Davis, the reason they won. Jalen Hurts' throwing ability, the reason they won. Yes, there are reasons, but I don't want to hear that being the specific reason. This team on both sides of the ball showed up when it mattered most. The defense was able to get key stops when it mattered most. And there was even a point in the game where they held the Rams to 3 straight field goals. Yes, they still gave up points, but at the rate the offense was going yesterday with their 3 and outs and getting absolutely no momentum, the fact that the defense was able to keep their morale and come out on the field with that bend but don't break type of strategy that Vic Fangio offers, it was definitely something great to see, 100%. And again, going back to those 3 field goals in a row that they gave up, well, let's just say, yeah, if they weren't field goals, let's just probably wouldn't be a green team that came away with the victory. The team that came away with the victory probably would have been yellow and blue. So this is something where that is a key factor. The defense was able to hold when it mattered most. And, of course, at the beginning of the game, specifically, obviously, the first half, things on all sides were not going right. And also, of course, special teams, something I definitely have to bring up yesterday that was kind of also going off the rails as well, where I don't know, there had to have been 4 kick returns, maybe 3 kick returns in a row that were dropped by the returner. And of course, the Eagles had Tank Bigsby back there, John Mechie the third, where it was just every single time it was kicked back to them, they would muff it, have to run back, pick it up, and by the time they turned upfield, well, everything was coming their way. The play was moving their direction, and they were pretty much swallowed up. I don't know how many times the Eagles' offense started yesterday within their own 20-yard line. They were backed up in an extreme way. I don't know how many times yesterday. So it was just everything was off yesterday for the Eagles. Of course, they started off the game strong. Well, they got the tush-push touchdown. And, of course, when everyone saw that touchdown, and I was one of those included in this thought process, where it's going to be one of those games, isn't it? The Eagles are going to get down there. They're going to get the tush-push. That's how they're going to win this game. It may be something similar to what we saw in Kansas City last week, right? That's what we were expecting. Well, not necessarily. The LA Rams knew exactly what they were doing. And, of course, with that defensive line, specifically guys like Byron Young, who also got another sack yesterday, and, of course, their Byron Young, not ours. We also have a Byron Young, but the Byron Young, the linebacker for the LA Rams, was already coming into that game hot. He had 3 sacks coming into that game. And as a total, the Rams had 8 sacks on the season coming into yesterday's matchup with the Eagles. Now, of course, they came out of yesterday's game with 4 more sacks to add on to their total of 8, which now, of course, with those 4 more sacks, you have 12 sacks now in the season for the Rams, right? But this is something where you knew that line was going to push hard. You knew that they were going to stack the box. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday many, many times. The Rams bringing up their linebackers, bringing up their guys, filling in the gaps, stacking the box in many ways possible. And they shut down Saquon Barkley. Yes, he had a couple okay runs, but for the most part, the Eagles' run game was completely silenced, which is something that has not happened in a while and something that not many teams can say they can do is silence the Eagles' run game. So if I'm a Rams fan, yes, obviously you're extremely ticked off about the game yesterday that you blew a lead as big as you had, 26-7. But something that, I mean, a lot of negatives. I know Rams fans extremely mad. And I mean, hey, can't stand with the birds. Can you still 3 times in a row, right? More than 3 times in a row, actually. But if I'm a Rams fan, something that I'm definitely happy about is the fact that you guys were able to stand up against an Eagles run game that absolutely demolished you guys twice last year, which kind of threw you guys around like a rag doll. If you're a Rams fan, you got thrown around like a rag doll last year by the Eagles run game. That didn't happen this past game. You guys stood up and I mean, it was kind of the other way around. The Eagles run game demolished you guys last year. Well, this year you demolished the Eagles run game. You stopped Saquon. Even on some design QB runs, Hurts was able to pick up some good runs, but still, overall with the run game, you guys sealed up the gaps. You stacked the box, something that, hey, I don't blame the Rams for doing at all. They came out ready to go on that run game. Yes, the first touchdown of the game was because of the tush push, and it was declared, obviously, with the tush push. It's a running touchdown. But you guys stood tall. So naturally, this comes back to what the Eagles are known for. Okay, if you're going to stop one of our weapons, we're just going to use our other weapon. That's exactly why the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year, is because, okay, you're going to key in on our run game, well, we'll kill you with the pass. What happened in Super Bowl 59 last year? That exact thing. Okay, well, it's Jalen Hurts can't throw. Jalen Hurts can't throw. Yeah, I heard that from a bunch of people in the first half yesterday. Let's see Hurts get, let's see him come back in this one. Let's see this. Let's see that. I was getting texts like crazy with that yesterday. Okay, well, glad to see you got proven wrong again. Jalen Hurts can't throw. He can't do this. He can't do that. He can't get out of a huge hole in that type of situation. Yeah, he can't. For sure. Yeah. They run their mouth. That's all they do, but then they get silenced by him every single week. And I love when they run their mouth because they run their mouth on Hurts. He proves them wrong again. Then they still get cranky and say, well, he's still crap. He's still a crappy QB. Oh, he's still, but it's an endless cycle. It's like a bunch of 2-year-olds that have a little tiny argument, but they're not man enough to say that they're wrong. And yes, that's something that I will say I'll stand behind in a very, very strong way. Because the Eagles have a QB that shows up when it matters most in a key situation. No, I'd rather not have a QB that makes the pretty play every single time. A guy that makes the pretty play throughout the regular season, looks incredible, but then fails when it matters most. With Jalen Hurts, it may not always be pretty, and it may not always be the best thing in the world, but when the time matters most, the completion will be there, the play will be there, and it will be made. And that's what we saw exactly yesterday. That second half came around. You knew the Rams exactly what they were doing. Again, stacking the box, bringing their linebackers up. So what happened? Well, the Eagles started finding those guys over the middle. One, Dallas Goedert. How did they get their first passing touchdown of the season? It was a pass to Goedert right over the middle, and he waltzed in for the touchdown. Then finally, A.J. Brown. They were able to get him on the board as he had an incredible game yesterday, not just with his ability in terms of the passing yards that he had. Of course, 6 receptions, 109 passing yards. Of course, he got his first passing touchdown of the season, which is now a career 50 for him. But the fact that Brown was able to have the amount of strong runs that he had, basically running over Rams defensive backs. It was so nice to see the Eagles wide receiver room back in action once again. And not just with A.J. Brown, his strong running, but you saw, of course, Devontae Smith get on the board again yesterday. 8 receptions, 60 yards. He also got a touchdown. So this is something where, again, they show up when it matters most. If you're going to stop the run game, okay, well, you better be prepared to stop the other weapon because the pass game will show up. And that's something where a lot of people had it in question, especially with this new offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo. Again, specifically with Jalen Hurts, it's his 8th offensive coordinator he has had in 9 seasons, dating back to, of course, college. So that was the big question. Okay, great, you're 2-0, but the Chiefs was all run game. How many tush pushes did they run in that Chiefs game? Well, a lot. And of course, the game against Dallas. Well, there was obviously more passing yards in that Dallas game than there was in the Chiefs game, but still wasn't a big passing game for the Eagles. So that was the big question coming into this. Okay, it was proven in the first half that your run game is not getting you where you want to go. So now what is it? Well, we have no choice. We have to adjust, and that's exactly what the Eagles were doing. They were finding the guys over the middle. They were finding guys like Goddard over the middle. They were finding guys like Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, who were running slants or, in general, just cross routes over the middle of the field. They were finding these guys. Since, again, Rams were stacking the box. Their linebackers were up. If they're up, there has to be a play available right in that secondary. And knowing the speed and the routes that the Eagles were running yesterday with the beautiful cut routes that I saw many, many times, they were able to get short passes, and not just short passes, but they were also able to get the long ball rocking and rolling again yesterday. We saw it with A.J. Brown a couple times where Hurts was able to get some good dimes in, but he can't throw, right? He can't perform when it matters most. He can't throw. No. Sure. Absolutely, he can't. But while your team loses and you have a QB that can't complete when it matters most, they talk crap on Jalen Hurts. I love it. Again, it's so funny. So funny. And I love when they rage about it, too, because they deserve to be mad. Should be mad at themselves. But for not knowing the sport of football that they claim to know. But, hey, what are you going to do? But, again, an explosive game from this offense. I should say an explosive half from this offense. As total, including everything in the first half, the Eagles only had 33 total yards. That's it. Again, including everything. Passing, rushing. Hurts, in general, yesterday had over 200 yards, 226 passing yards, 21 for 32 on his completion and attempts, 3 passing touchdowns, and, of course, a QB rating of 124.22. Now, those are his stats for the game. Here is his stats for trailing in that second half, of course. It was 18 out of 29 for 212 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. 212 passing yards for that second half. 226 passing yards for the entire game. Yes, those numbers aren't exactly that much different. A little more than 10 yards difference right there, right? So that's the situation. Yes, I understand. They played one half. They were looking awful in the beginning, and this is something where they have to be ready to play. And, of course, this is something that, again, there was a lot going on that Eagles sideline. We saw Jalen Hurts get vocal with his offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo. We saw it. And it's something where they were looking to get on the same page. That was the main thing for the Eagles. We need to get on the same page here. Because the way things were going, the communication looked off. I don't know how many times in the beginning of the game. And, again, specifically talking about that second half, I can focus on the second quarter when I talk about this, where there were passing attempts, but the timing, the communication wasn't there. And specifically, the timing was off in a huge way. I don't know how many times that he had guys open, for example, A.J. Brown open, but by the time he realized and threw the ball, it was late. So the communication and timing in general was off in that whole entire first half, obviously. And not only was it the timing, but there was no rhythm. The offense had absolutely no rhythm. And in my opinion, this offense hasn't had a rhythm at all this year, except for yesterday's game in the second half. Because there were many times where the Eagles in previous games, they would move down the field, but it was very, very choppy. They would kind of eat away as they would go down the field. And, of course, their drives were long. They were extremely long drives. Well, that couldn't necessarily happen in this version because you were trailing by a significant amount, of course, going into the second half. The Rams opened up the third quarter, the second half, with scoring another touchdown. So you were sitting at 26-7 with 11 minutes and 38 seconds remaining in that third quarter. And the Eagles scored 4 touchdowns in a row, 2 in the third and 2 in the fourth. That doesn't come from time-consuming drives. That comes from quick drives of going down the field, in some case, no huddle type of situations where the Eagles were moving. They were on a roll. They had a rhythm. And was something where Hurts would step back, boom, immediately. The ball was out of the pocket. There were many times yesterday where, in the past, the Eagles were not good at picking up blitzes, and I know Hurts was not the greatest at picking up blitzes, but yesterday they did so against a thriving Rams defensive line. So this is the type of situation that I'm bringing up, was their ability to adapt and their ability to get the job done when it mattered most and to show up when it matters most. A QB that can show up when it matters most, because I know a lot of people don't really know that feeling, even though they think they do. So a QB that showed up when it mattered most, and a defense that showed up when it matters most. I've talked enough on the offense, but to kind of do a little transition here onto the defense, can't ignore them, because it wasn't the offense that, the offense obviously was a big contributor, but the defense, yes, they gave up 26 points. But the fact that they were able to hold them to those 3 field goals in the middle of the game, 3 field goals in a row in the middle of the game was huge. Because if those were touchdowns, the Rams would have completely buried the Eagles so deep in the grave it wouldn't have been funny. Might as well have gotten your tissues out and said rip at that point. But no, the defense was able to show up, and they were able to, again, this bend but don't break type of concept Vic Fangio has put into this Eagles team ever since he got here last year. And, of course, you had guys that stepped up in a huge way. And, of course, on Eagles Chat, I do, again, if you're not following Eagles Chat, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Chat Eagles, as well with checking out my YouTube channel, Eagles Chat YouTube. That's all you need to put in, just Eagles Chat, where I did my show on yesterday's game. Again, you can check out the Week 3 Eagles Chat that is now up and rocking and rolling. But my defensive players of the game, usually I do a defensive POG, defensive player of the game, but this past performance, I had to pick more than one. And obviously, I know most of you know who one of the guys are, but another guy that I really have to give credit is Zach Bond. He came off a little bit of a silent week against the Chiefs. Yes, he made some good plays against the Chiefs, but overall, it was somewhat quiet. Knowing as much as Zach Bond's usually in the play, it was a somewhat quiet week. But yesterday, of course, Zach Bond got that key interception at the beginning of the game. But that's not even why I named him player of the game. It was a big play, the interception. Don't get me wrong, but that's not the reason he's the player. I have him as one of my players of the game for the defense. One of the 2 guys I have up there. He had 7 tackles and was just all over when it mattered most. He had a good amount of pass breakups and was in the right position. Also got good pressure on Stafford. Matthew Stafford is one of those guys where if you get good pressure on him and you kind of knock him in the head a couple of times and really say, who's boss, he starts to slowly but surely kind of back off a little bit. And we noticed that a couple of times. And, of course, with those red zone stops the Eagles got yesterday, the forced the field goal. Yes, they got kind of lucky with the one because it was a holding penalty where the Rams looked like they were going to punch in another touchdown, but a clear tackle on Jahad Campbell, which got that penalty called, which backed them up where they couldn't do any more with that, so they had no choice but to kick it. But then there was a couple other times where Matthew Stafford just straight up overthrew his target, and the Rams had to kick it away or kick the field goal. But the Eagles' defensive line was finally able to get pressure on Stafford when it mattered most. And again, at the beginning of the game, they weren't getting much pressure at all. Matter of fact, Stafford was picking apart the secondary like Swiss cheese. So that was also something that changed, was their ability to get pressure. And, of course, Zach Bond, of course, other guys, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. We'll talk about Jordan Davis in a bit, right, folks? Can't ignore him. But another one right there, of course, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, all contributed. But Zach Bond was another guy who got good pressure and was able to step up when it mattered most. Of course, Jihad Campbell had a for some reason,
6-227-7200 with either extension 4559 or extension 4556. And remember, you are not alone.
and you are definitely not alone because we're back here on 91.5 WDBK for Midday Madness for the closing segment. It definitely was a pleasure to be with you folks here for this past hour, of course, discussing the Eagles, discussing the Fightin' Phils, and of course the closing segment. Well, I'll talk about the two brothers now at the X. Used to be the Wells Fargo Center. Now, of course, Xfinity Mobile Arena, the Sixers and Flyers. What have these two been up to recently? What have they been doing? Well, preparation has been what has gone on for both of those teams. And, of course, Sixers obviously a lot going on. Embiid slimmed down. The Sixers have a new court. A lot going on preparation-wise, like I said. But, of course, for as well the Orange and Black, who got back in motion last night, were able to have their first preseason game of the season. Great to see the Orange and Black rock and rolling back again. Got to see some good contributions from guys, of course, like Matvey Michkov, who had one heck of a shootout goal for the Orange and Black last night. Was definitely great to see them on the winning side of things once again. Even though it is preseason, they were able to take it with a 3-2 shootout win over the New York Islanders. And definitely Trevor Zegras, another one who was standing out in a big way last night, who made his Flyers debut against the Islanders. And of course, was something great to see, as he's another guy that the Orange and Black are expecting to impress in a big way coming up. Of course, his big factor is, can he stay healthy? That's going to be the main question for Trevor Zegras coming into this. Of course, this pass with Anaheim was thought to be big, but injuries were a big factor in general. And of course, the Anaheim Ducks not really putting too much help into him as well with the lineup that surrounded him. But of course, Zegras also reunited with guys like Jamie Drysdale, who is now obviously with the Flyers, a defenseman for the Flyers, also played with Anaheim. So he got to reunite with him this year. But this is definitely something where Zegras in general was not just, of course, his normal silky self on offense, but he was also to make a good number of solid defensive plays yesterday as well. And this was something where he was able to do well with good zone support in different puck battles and was able to strip a couple guys of the puck. So this is one of those situations where that was an issue with the Flyers last year in that whole situation. Their ability to win board battles, especially in the defensive zone and especially in the corners. Especially, I remember when I played, was something that I loved to do as a defenseman, was to, fight in those board battles and be able to come away with the puck. Whoever was the strongest was able to win it, and just the ability to pin guys along the board and along the boards and be able to fight the puck out. That was something that the Flyers had a big issue with, not just last year, but these past, I would say 4 years, was their ability to win board battles, to win those little battles along the boards. Because yes, it's a fast sport, and this is something where if you lose those board battles, the puck could come out of there, go to the opposing team. Next thing you know, they're breaking down the ice. Or if you're in your defensive zone, you can poke the puck out of there. Next thing you know, you have it to one of your wingers, and you have a nice solid breakout going through the neutral zone into their defensive zone. So this is something where seeing contributions from offensive players like that are strong on board battles and being able to play defense in a big way is definitely something that brings some good confidence into that locker room, and is something where, again, in previous years with the Flyers has been a little bit of an issue. Of course, our defense has been an issue, but their ability to set up in the defensive zone in terms of boxing out on the penalty kill, in terms of just playing simple defense with being able to defend the slot, something where many times the Flyers would just let guys from the opposing team's wingers, centers, whatnot, whatever you want to say, basically walk in the crease or walk in that slot and be wide open, or that backdoor area of the net be completely wide open without any support or any defense. So this is something where getting contributions all over the lineup with defensive plays is definitely a key thing to have. And again, great performances from Trevor Zegras, great performances from Matvey Michkov, another guy who was in the running for Carter this year. And this is something where hopefully in the future we'll be able to see some more out of Matt Vey coming up, as of course I think there'll be some awards waiting for him down the line, but hopefully the Flyers can continue to develop him. And of course under Rick Tocchet, I'm sure the Flyers will be able to get back to that feisty Broad Street Bully type of hockey once again, as knowing that when every time an opposing team comes to Philly, they're going to know they're going to be leaving in some type of, let's just say maybe leaving in some pain, possibly. That's the type of mindset the Flyers want to bring back. And so far, Rick Tocchet is doing his best to do so. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires in these next upcoming weeks. Of course, that is going to do it for Midday Madness here on 91.5 WDBK. Once again, this has been Vincent Foch behind the mic for your 12 o'clock hour, your 1 o'clock hour. Got a little bit mixed up there, but it's okay. It's Monday. I'm allowed to not know where I am or how to do things because that's how it is. But have a good one, folks. And as always, God bless.
The award-winning Pine Barrens Chorus is looking for men of all ages who love to sing in the 4-part harmony a cappella style. The Pine Barrens Chorus is located in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and is a membership organization of 4-part harmony singers from ages 18 to 90 plus, representing all walks of life in southern New Jersey. If you are interested in joining, email contact@pine